Extra story. The meeting of the gods and the heirloom sword. One day, in the divine realm of the fantasy world Fall, Gain had called the other gods to congregate around a round table. What's the emergency, Gain? Saralippa hasn't finished serving his punishment, Kiralul, the goddess of war, protested. I don't mind getting a break, but I'm curious why you called us all in. You could have sent a message for most things. Gain produced a long black box from thin air. All gods but Gain, Kufo, and Lulutia stared at it with apprehension. What is that thing? And where do you get it? Asked Tekken, the god of wine. Williaries, the goddess of the earth, visibly raised her guard. Such an ominous. No, Sinistora. Fernobelia, the goddess of academia, was the first to guess the contents and origin of the box. Gain, Kufo, and Lulutia. You three made contact with a god on Earth, didn't you? A low-ranking one at that. Bingo, Gain said. The box gave it away. It's sealed, but the power used for it feels different from any of us. Considering how often you went to Earth, the natural conclusion is that the seal was made by an Earth god. What's more, the seal is fraying. Any of us would have made a better seal, and most Earth gods would have done an even better job, since the majority are more powerful than us. Therefore, the one who made this seal was an Earth god, but one lower enough in rank to have less power than us. Thanks for the walkthrough. You're correct, said Gain. He, along with Kufo and Lulutia, explained what happened in Earth's divine realm. About the current state of it, the old god or nameless one who had been sending magic over to Fall, and about the box before them. Grimp, the god of agriculture, grunted. Fair one, got a whole lot of questions. Like that nameless one or whatever, and what he wants or how they be coppin' with things in their own divine realm, but may as well start with what's in the box thar. The other gods showed signs of agreement. So this box contains the final pair of swords made by Ryoma's father, yes? I want Tekken to take a look at it first. Thought you'd never ask. Put it here. Tekken, the god of skill and handiwork, took the box and extracted the longer of the swords with uncharacteristic care. Well, I'll be. The sword, drawn from its protective white sheath, gleamed with an entrancing beauty that drew in and maddened those who beheld it. Tekken studied the blade from all angles for a minute. Impressive. Only one special material of note, but he must have researched and drilled everything into his memory, from the required amount of hammering, the temperature of the metal, fire, water. It was perfectly balanced, if that makes sense. You probably couldn't find many katanas crafted better than this. Special enough to get our seal of approval, a Tekken. So what is this special material on about? Grimp asked. Right. It's the soul of its maker, Tekken said with audible disappointment. The other god's expression sank. Ryoma's dad was undoubtedly one of the best sword makers that ever lived. Even then, his passion kept burning and he always strove for better techniques. That's how he made this. He used the sword that was already at the best durability, cut and shape it could as the foundation to pour all of his soul and power into. I get the gist of that part, but you know better than I do, Fernobelia. Tekken slid the box and the short sword within it towards the center of the table. Fernobelia took it silently and drew it from its sheath before studying it as Tekken did. I see. It is similar to a sacrificial rite. He must have done it subconsciously, but a powerful thought awakened the magic within him, grinding down his soul in the process, skyrocketing the sword's quality as if by a curse. It allures people because the katana is treated as a work of art as well. It's like a byproduct. I hear the ideal katana remains straight, sharp, and unbroken. Ryoma's father must have given all of his essence to these two blades to make them the epitome of that ideal. In addition to the sharpness found in many masterfully forged swords, it contains powers that you could call indestructible and all slice. What's that supposed to mean? Saralippa chimed in. It won't break and it'll cut anything? More or less. An indestructible sword would never so much as chip no matter how poorly it is handled, and it'll never rust even if it was left to the elements for years. All slice means that in addition to being very sharp, it can cut monsters in spirit form like the undead and even magic spells. If the right person wields it, I wouldn't be surprised if it could cut gods like us. Dang. A weapon what can damage a god? That's fodder for a real legend. It just might get one. Long story short, the sword is incredibly powerful, especially for it being man-made. No matter the nature of his craft, I will praise its maker. Not even Gain had expected the swords to be so powerful. Even gods rarely saw humans who perfected their craft to this level. Then what should we do with these swords? The gods of Earth wanted Ryoma to have it, since it belonged to him. They left the timing up to us, so we have the choice to not give it to him. I think I do want to send them to him. It's his father's keepsake, after all. I agree with Kufo. Can't think of a better human to give her to. We don't have a reason to give them to any other human. My concern lies with sending something this dangerous down to the human realm. Well, I don't really want to keep something that can cut a god anywhere near me. Isn't it safer down there than keeping it up here? There's plenty of monsters to use them against, aren't there? Well, as powerful as it might be, it's just a sword. It's simply a sword that became enchanted as a result of the maker pursuing the ultimate blade. Nonetheless, it's dangerous. We shouldn't make our decision lightly. Even if we are going to send them down, we should do so carefully. We should keep it under a tight seal in the divine realm until we reach our decision. Then I'll craft new sheaths, well, everything but the blades, to keep them sealed. We need a proper seal no matter what we do with them, don't we? Can you do that for us, Tekken? My idea. I'll do it. Then we'll leave the sealing to you. Tekken will hold on to the swords for the time being, and we will discuss what to do with them afterwards. I would like each of us to consider our options as you keep an eye on Ryoma. We'll take a vote down the road. Let's go. No. The meeting of the gods had concluded. And Seralipta's scream faded into nothingness. Bonus short stories. The Shopkeeper's Winter. One day, in the liminal space between the old year and the new, the employees of Bamboo Forest were in the laundry shop having dinner together. Wonderful cooking as always, Chelma. It's so nice to have a hot meal after work. With how cold it's getting, nothing beats a warm soup. Jane, Maria, and Fina, who all came out to work in the city from the same village, expressed their satisfaction. Carm, sitting next to them, asked, "Is there anything you need for the winter?" Most of us just moved to the city, and I've been told this winter is going to be especially harsh. Our boss was concerned. No problems here. He's already given us winter wear. I don't think there's much more we need. We could only eat preserved goods back in the village, and we were stuck in the house until spring. It's going to be an easy winter for us. We are fine as well. Right, Father? Yes. If anything, I might end up getting a little rusty. Likewise. Then you should join the training at the security company when you have the time, Faye, Dolce. They'd love to have you two there. Master said he is looking for sparring opponents as well. I often spend my days off there. I feel an urge to fight around New Year's, perhaps because it used to be the peak season. Only for an ex-gladiator like you, Ox. It makes sense, of course, but every career has a different way of passing the winter. Chelma, who had been listening to their conversation with a smile, chimed in. Speaking of, the manager asked the other day if we wanted to hold a party. Oh, right. A bonengai, he called it. There's a tradition in his homeland where coworkers gather at the end of the year for a celebration. He said attendance was voluntary, but what are you guys planning? I'll be there. All I've done to celebrate New Year's back in the village were little celebrations with my family. This sounds like fun. Me too. I won't be spending New Year's with my family this year, and I don't want to be alone for it. You won't be lonely in the dorm. We'll all be there. Let me know if you want to request any dishes for the party. I'll try my best to accommodate. I can try making local dishes from where you are from, as long as you give me the recipe." The employees of Bamboo Forest joyfully shared another dinner, recharging their energy for another workday to come. A worker's reminiscence. "Are you ready, dear?" "Yeah." "New town, same old you are." "Sorry." "Don't worry about it. I'll open up the shop." I watched as my wife chuckled and left the kitchen. Another typical morning for us. A quiet moment for us in the midst of our peaceful days. A precious moment that I had previously taken for granted. I couldn't help but remember it all when I was alone. Until a few months ago, I'd been running a bakery in a town called Rohilt. Thanks to my perseverance, the bakery had gotten quite popular, enough for me to take on an apprentice. It seemed like the years flew by. Before I knew it, I had married a woman my parents set me up with. I was happy. Everything was going well. So when it all came crashing down, that made it all the more devastating. One day, a debt collector came knocking at our door and slammed a loan agreement I didn't recognize on the counter. My apprentice had betrayed me. I had trusted him, and by that time, I'd spent more time with him than with my wife. He was smart, which was why I had him on bookkeeping duty. He took advantage of that to take out loan after loan on the bakery's dime. I couldn't believe it at first, and tried to talk to him, but he was already gone. The debt collector told me that they had gone to my apprentice numerous times before. I tried going through the Merchants Guild, only to find more evidence of the loans and his betrayal. I found out about it all too late. To keep my newlywed wife out of it, I sold the bakery to pay for most of the loans and left my wife with a letter and divorce papers. I jumped onto the next carriage to start a new day job. To be honest, I didn't care where the carriage was headed. I didn't care much what I did after arriving at Gimel either. I interviewed at all the places the Merchants Guild told me to and began working at the trash plant. I felt disgusted with myself, no matter how many times I went over what I'd done that day, until, in the dining hall, I took my seat without taking the bread they were handing out. I couldn't stand the sight of bread. A child kindly called to me, but I yelled back at that sorry excuse for bread out of my face. In hindsight, I had already stepped into the trap. That kid was none other than the one in charge of the entire trash plant. He wasn't just the man in charge's kid, he was the man in charge. My friends back home wouldn't have believed it. The kid, Ryoma, approached me like a normal kid doing me a favor. In the end, he made me agree to run the bakery in the dining hall, of all places. After I blurted out that I could bake better bread than that, I couldn't back down. Thanks to him, I gained a new reason to bake. I hated the work at first, but as I continued baking, I began to think about my former apprentice and my wife, but mostly about the past. The dedicated faces of my old man baking bread, and my mother selling it. What I remembered the most fondly, though, were our customers' smiles. It was fun to watch them come and go, and it made me happy. I took pride in them, even as a kid, hence why I never felt like all my helping out with the bakery, or the work I did to inherit it, was a chore. Once I stopped hating my work in the dining hall, Ryoma surprised me once again. He showed up one day like always, except my wife was with him. It took me a while to figure out what was going on, but my wife had no intention of leaving me. She had come to Gimel in search of work herself, and had been looking for me. She knew she would find me as soon as she learned which agency had brought me to Gimel. She was planning to work while looking for me around town, but luckily she'd met Ryoma during her interview, and things just went from there. It turned out that Ryoma had told her to wait before coming to see me. I had been so dispirited that he didn't expect a joyful reunion. Looking back on how I felt before I started baking again, I couldn't argue with the kid. Ryoma left us alone, and we talked well into the night. I felt so guilty that I wanted to bury myself alive. I hadn't met my wife before my parents introduced me to her, but she had frequented my parents' bakery when we were younger, and had felt affection for the kid glued to the oven. Not only had my wife been searching for me without signing the divorce papers I left her, but she had begged her parents to pay off the rest of the loan for us. It wasn't enough to buy back our bakery, but she told me that we needed only to repay her parents at a reasonable pace. No words could express my gratitude. I wanted to make it up to her somehow, but there wasn't much I could do. Fortunately, I did have a job and was in a situation where I could work hard for the money. I resolved to give it my all at baking, with my wife by my side. Each morning, when I got the bakery and the dining hall ready for opening, my past came back to me and struck me with regret. But then I remembered what I was working for, and it gave me the motivation I needed. Right, let's get this show on the road. Another day in the bakery began quietly. I chose to believe that this was the best way for me to show my gratitude.